Hi, this is part 2 of my 2-part video series on how to align the front forks on a motorcycle, the front forks, handlebars, front wheel on a motorcycle. This video, the second part, is going to demonstrate the differences of the procedure on a street bike rather than a motocross bike, which is what I was demonstrating on the first one. There's just some minor differences. On a street bike, you don't need a center stand. You can do it basically on the ground, on the road. It's actually best to have it on a flat concrete pad. You know, that's the best. A smooth, flat surface. Okay, and as you see here, I've got a spool stand. That'll come into play later, but you can have both wheels on the ground for this procedure. Plus, you might not be in a shop or in a space that has a center stand or anchor tie downs, and a lot of times they don't have a lot of room underneath to put a jack or a center stand anyway. So it's just there's a way to do it without all that, and it works really well. Okay, one thing I didn't mention in the first video, which was basically because it was obvious that there was a twist in the front end, and I was more pinpointed just on that fact. So I just kind of went ahead and showed you how to align the front end on that bike. But what you should always do, if you're not sure, like if your handlebars feel like if you're riding down the road and you feel like your bike is, turning to one side, or, it just doesn't quite feel straight as you're turning or whatnot, or riding straight, it could be that your back wheel isn't fully aligned. The only way to know if your front end is completely straight and your bike is riding completely straight is if your back wheel is also completely 100% straight and perpendicular, which is a exact 90 degree to the running drivetrain of the motorcycle. So you want the back wheel perfectly parallel to the front wheel as it's running straight, and perfectly parallel to the running gear of the motorcycle. So that it rides perfectly true down the highway or the road. Okay, so basically that means that the back wheel, in a nutshell, should be the same distance. The back axle should be the same distance from a point on the motorcycle that is the exact same on both sides. Should be the same distance from that point to each side of the rear axle, from the center of the axle to the center of that point, whichever it is. It's going to be a common point, but a stationary and an accurate point, which is, for all motorcycles, it's going to be the swing arm pivot. So you use the swing arm pivot shaft as a reference to measure your distance between the center of that pivot shaft to the center of your axle. The distance between your pivot shaft and your axle, center to center, should be the same on both sides. And that is in addition to making sure, a lot of times bikes have these increments for adjustment. Now these are on new bikes, newer bikes, definitely 100%. They are designed to be 100% accurate. Now, there are errors sometimes in the manufacturing process, and so you should, at some point, preferably, at the very beginning of your riding career, you should check just to make sure that these increments are accurate. So the way to do that is to use the method that I'm just describing here, which is measuring from the center of your pivot shaft to the center of your rear axle. And if they're different, you'll have to adjust one side or the other, and I'll get into that in a different video. But this bike is straight. The axle just happens to be, I pre-measured it earlier, okay, and you can use a standard tape measure. A tape measure along with, I've already measured that, I've already done it, I'm just making the video here for you guys, but I've pre-measured my rear wheel, and it is the same on both sides. What I did was, it's hard for me to put a tape between here. What I'll do is I'll just kind of demonstrate it here. I'll run and grab a tape measure for you. Okay, so just using standard Stanley tape measure, whatever kind, doesn't matter, just newer probably is better. You want one that's accurate, so new ones are usually most accurate, but just whatever you do, just make sure that you use the same tape measure for both sides, you know, that way you don't get any indiscrepancies. So let's see if I can set this up here in a place that's going to be able to see it. I just want you to see this for a quick sec. So what I had to do was, it was hard for me to reference the middle of this, so I had to stick a rod in here, one that's perfectly straight, has to be machine straight. So you have to get something that fits inside. Luckily this pivot shaft is hollow, so I could actually put something in there. A drill bit works. You can use a drill bit, because drill bits can be any size in diameter, so you can select a different, you know, any size it fits. You can try them out, and once you find the one that fits exactly in there without any slop, that'll work. And once the end's sticking out, that gives you a perfect center to measure from. Close enough anyways, right? It'll be almost bang on. You can pivot the drill bit until the little center of the tip is where you need it to be. Okay, so for our purposes, this is going to be good enough too. I just had to get it sticking out here so I can get my tape on it and reference it by eye. Okay, so what I want to do is, for me, it's easiest for me to do it this way, and hopefully I don't have to show you how to use your tape measure, but you set your tape up, making sure that that's on center, okay, and then you take it to your back axle here. Yep, and you measure right into the center of that axle. Okay, so do that on both sides. So I had to use an extension to pull in there. What I did was I coated the last inch or so, the last 2 inches inside here with grease, just to take up, because it was a little sloppy. So a layer of grease around the outside took up that slop, so it stayed right in the middle. You don't want to put grease all the way along the shaft, because that'll be a pain in the butt to clean up. Okay, so once you're done, obviously, you know, put it somewhere where it's not going to get anything else dirty, and then wash it off really good after. On the other side, it's a little bit different because it has the nut. So I had to jimmy rig up a little thing here. I used a metric nut with a bolt that I screwed in. Now it's easy enough for me to see the center of that bolt. Again, I had to put a layer of grease around the outside just to seat that in there properly, so that it didn't slop down. because without grease, if you just put the nut in there, the nut will, it'll drop a bit because it'll be kind of loose, so it'll drop down. So to prevent that, you just coat it with grease and then it stays perfectly in the middle. Then you can get your center to center measurement here. Okay, I will be back with video part 3 right away.